Hi folks, thanks for tuning in again. This is Grady with Strong Featured Nature Doc and PowerNutrientsLLC.com. If you haven't already done so, do subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying the content, and also check out our website, PowerNutrientsLLC.com. I'll just jump right in with today's topic, which is intermittent fasting, and that's been of interest to me for a very long time. I've been practicing, more specifically, the Warrior Diet for 12 years now. Written by a gentleman named Ori Hofmeckler. Very interesting life story. He studied biology. He's an artist. His subject matter is typically political satire, and he was also an operative in the Israeli Special Forces. And it's an amazing book. He synthesized a lot of human history, a lot of very interesting historical examples, discussing human nutrition, anthropological examples, also a lot of very solid physiology and endocrinology, all of which I understand to be true. At that point in time, I was in undergrad studying anthropology, and the science was a bit over my head, so I do encourage you to do a bit of background research, but to this point, what I'm learning in medical school, it's all 100% correct, if not a bit technical. So I'll discuss the pros and cons as I experience them. So this is purely my story. Definitely more pros than cons. And like I said, I've been practicing intermittent fasting intermittently for the past 12 years now. I'm not currently. But the biggest benefit that I experienced, and this is, I'm assuming, what most people are after, is fat loss. The leanest I got, and I was practicing intermittent fasting at that point in time, was about 4.5% body fat. So that's, at that point, if I were a bodybuilder, I would be ready for the stage, ready for a contest. But then the converse to that is 4.5% body fat is basically self-inflicted starvation. It is not sustainable in the long term. Maybe for a few people who are naturally very, very lean, but definitely not the majority of human beings. And at that point, I did start to experience some cons. Noticeably, an impairment of cognitive ability. And at that point in time, I was in a graduate program studying East Asian medicine. So needless to say, I kind of backed off from that point because the brain fog and inability to concentrate and poor memory were just too detrimental to my daily performance. So at that point, the cons outweighed the pros. But I think that for me personally, I could sustain 6% body fat in the long term and be comfortable. Who's to say what your mileage will be? Obviously, there's a lot of genetic diversity within the human species, so just to arbitrarily state a figure, 6%, 8%, 10%, 12%, I think most people would fall into that range. But like I said, your mileage may vary. So kind of part and parcel to the weight loss is also the detoxification that comes with that. We store a lot of toxins in our fat because most toxins, especially xenoestrogens, are fat soluble. So it's a great thing to shed some fat, and it's, by contrast, it's a reason why there's so much obesity in the developed world, is because those, like I said, those toxins are fat soluble. So basically the body is doing its best to insulate the vital organs from that toxicity, and therefore promoting more adiposity or fatness. So as we lose fat and as we detoxify, what's happening in that fasted state is that our immune system, which is normally expressed to a really, really high degree, the figure that I remember is about 80% of our white blood cells will be patrolling and monitoring our gut, and that includes the liver. But they could otherwise be doing very, very important things like destroying cancerous cells, which, by the way, are manifesting as I speak in you and in me. So in a normal, healthy person who's not in a chronically stressed state, who's not immunocompromised, who's not, well into their old age, we are producing cancerous cells on a daily basis, but our immune system is taking care of them and destroying them. So, the broader topic of autophagy, or recycling of one's own cells, tissues for raw materials, is kind of beyond the scope of this video. But that is part and parcel to detoxification, is that those old tired cells are consumed for their raw materials so that newer, healthier, younger cells can be rebuilt in their place. And the Warrior Diet / intermittent fasting definitely promotes that. And then flowing into the third big pro that I experienced was, and I really couldn't measure this in a long term, on a long-term basis. I'm 32. I started this when I was 20. Is anti-aging. So what a lot of people will notice practicing this on a relatively longer term basis is younger looking skin, and obviously like better body composition that you would associate with younger people. But really in the background what's going on is that as insulin is low because you're not in a frequently fed state on a constant basis, cortisol can increase, glucagon can increase, which are catabolic hormones. Growth hormone also increases, which is simultaneously an anabolic hormone, but it's also a catabolic hormone in that it promotes lipolysis, so the burning of fat, the releasing of free fatty acids into the blood for fuel, while also building muscle, while basically building all of the body's tissues except for fat. And this is not going to come as a surprise or a news flash to really anyone watching this, but growth hormone is sort of the penultimate anti-aging hormone. I've seen some crazy figures with regard to intermittent fasting and the growth hormone increase that you could expect, and I don't necessarily believe them, but perhaps they're correct. But I've seen, you know, figures around the 1,000% mark, and that would be phenomenal. But if that were the case, I would expect to see a lot more cases of acromegaly in the population practicing intermittent fasting, and you can look up pictures about that. And then moving into the fourth point, not necessarily benefits that I think a lot of people are after, but I would probably enjoy, that there is a mental cognitive boosting effect to expect from the warrior diet or intermittent fasting. And I realize that I am contradicting a point that I made earlier, where I said that at my leanest my mental faculties were impaired. But at a healthy fat range for me personally, I definitely would say that you would experience a sense of inner peace, mental clarity, and really what's happening in the background to provide for that is basically the same mechanism for fat burning, is that your neurotransmitters are optimized for better focus, for a sharper mind. I noticed better vision, as a matter of fact. But basically what's happening is what we call seeking behavior. You're basically on the hunt. So reflexes would be sharper. I mean, this is all attributable to higher levels of cortisol, higher levels of epinephrine, dopamine. And this is a point where, again, I would encourage you to read Ori Hofmeckler's book, because he spells this out in much better detail. I'm limited to 10 minutes by YouTube, but yeah, pick up a copy. It's $20, and well worth it. Life-changing, as a matter of fact. That's my personal experience. But then sort of running from that same point, there's almost a spiritual aspect to this, and that's something that he discusses as well, is that within religious traditions spanning the world, there's an understanding that in order to reach a deeper spiritual state, you have to have an empty stomach. Full mind, empty stomach. And my experience in that respect was that it's hard to describe. I was slower to buy things, which was great because I saved money. I also saved money not buying as much food. I was slower to buy things. I guess I was just generally less attached to material things. And I would say more, not necessarily more attached to human relationships, but those definitely came more gracefully. Also relationships with stuff like plants and animals, which we do have relationships with. And that's a healthy thing. So overall, my experience with intermittent fasting and the warrior diet has been an incredibly positive one, very transformative for those reasons. And I would highly encourage you to take up that practice. So for the time being, I'll sign off, and I'll probably discuss this topic in future videos. Hope you guys enjoyed.